Hey, welcome to the Nursing Dose with your host, Dr. Farah Laurent. Today, I want to talk about why nurses stay broke while carrying entire systems and what to do about it and how to change it. All right. So, today I'm going to share 5 different tips on how you can improve that and also share my conference at the end and how you can attend. It's a conference in Tampa, Florida, Nurses Making Business Moves. For those who don't know me, I've been a nurse for over 20 years, started out in emergency medicine, moved into education, leadership, and now entrepreneurship. So let's get into it. So many nurses think that just because automatically, you get your first offer, that you get the highest offer ever, right? So that is incorrect. Most HRs expect you to negotiate your salary, but most nurses actually don't negotiate their salary. So this is why I highly recommend that new graduate nurses start off by negotiating their salary. And many of them will ask me, "Hey, if I negotiate my salary, are they going to, take the offer back or like retract the offer?" But that's not going to happen. As long as you counter back, you do the research, the market research. You can go on salary.com, indeed.com, and look at the salary range for the city that you're in with your years of experience. So typically, I help my new graduate nurses negotiate anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 on their base salary. All right. And I would say a good, a good number, depending on what city you're in, and again, your market research, I would actually ask about typically about 5 to 10K, depending on how reasonable the offer, they give you. So my number one tip is going to be negotiate your salary like your life depends on it, right? Because essentially it does. If you don't negotiate your salary early on in your career, the base salary, what will happen is if you take a very low ball offer, raises don't necessarily come every single year. So what will happen is your base salary will be very low and you may not get raises every single year. You might have to wait 2 or 3 years to actually get a raise. And sometimes those raises are only about 1 to maybe 3%. So that's why it's so important to raise the base salary and negotiate. If they happen to give you a sign on bonus, that's great. It's a plus. But what I would do is try to negotiate that. And instead of getting a sign on bonus, ask them if they can actually put that on your base salary. Because the sign on bonus is just a one time bonus and it'll go away pretty quickly. But if you can try to negotiate a higher base salary, you're going to be getting that year after year. So I hope that's helpful. The other thing, and this is for not just new graduate nurses, it could be for nurse practitioners, anybody really in nursing, even in leadership and education, do not accept the first offer unless, it is market value and you've done your research and it's way above what you were expecting to get and, you're happy with it, then yes. But typically, like I said, HR will expect you to negotiate your salary. And I don't know exactly what the statistic is, but I think there's only like a certain percentage of nurses who actually negotiate their salary. I don't know if it's like 30% or something like that. But that's why it's so important to do your research before you go to the interview. Okay. The other thing that people don't know is if, let's say, the recruiter wants to offer you the position, sometimes they'll ask you if you had a past position and they'll ask you, like, oh, what are you currently making? You don't have to offer that information. You can just dodge the question by saying, I believe that, my strengths and my skills, the past experience in education that I bring to this role, um, I truly believe that we'll come to an agreement and a fair compensation. And that's like a way that you can dodge that question and just be honest and say, yeah, I think that we can come to an agreement. You don't have to throw a number out there. Okay. So that's the top one. And then the other thing that you have to realize is negotiation doesn't mean that you're being greedy. Nursing school doesn't teach us how to negotiate the salary. They don't really teach us how to be prepared for interviews. There's no real business acumen, marketing skills, negotiating skills that are going on in nursing school. So that's why I want to make sure that for your next offer, you're equipped to keep negotiating your salary. And let's say you really enjoy the role that you're currently in, but you're getting more responsibilities year after year. There's other things that you have to do, and you're exceeding performance. I would say try to record those data points, those metrics, so that you can bring it to your performance evaluation, because during that time frame is a good time that you can actually ask for a raise or promotion. Some nurses think, and I used to think the same. I used to think if you got advanced degrees or advanced certifications, that your workplace would automatically just give you more money, but it doesn't work that way. Yes, some might give you a couple $100 maybe for a certification, or maybe $1,000 if you get your master's or something like that, especially if it's a magnet hospital. But they don't necessarily will give you a raise, an automatic raise just for getting an advanced degree. And think about it. Some of these advanced degrees that that nurses are getting are master's level, doctorate level, degrees, and it can cost anywhere from $40,000, up to $100,000 for degrees if you're going to say like a high Ivy League school or something. So make sure that when you're negotiating, you're not only negotiating salary in terms of monetary, but there are places that will actually give you loan forgiveness. So you can ask for that. You can ask for a better schedule, more time off. So there are different things that you can negotiate in the compensation package, and not just the actual money. But obviously, that's part of the package. So find out what you can negotiate in the particular role that you're going for. Okay, so that's number one. And number two, I would say the biggest thing that'll help you leverage your skills is to upskill constantly in your career, in your nursing career. And I'm not talking about just nursing, I'm talking about beyond your nursing skills. So some people think that, if you get a certification degree, let's say you get a simulation certification or something like that, that's all you need to do. But I highly suggest that you upskill and stack up your skills outside of nursing as well. And that'll help you grow and essentially help you make more money, right? So a couple things, like I said, clinical skills will not help you unlock wealth, right? What will help you unlock that wealth is, number one, business acumen, right? So you don't necessarily have to go to business school and get an MBA, but a lot of nurses do. So if you do have an MBA, that's great, because those are some required skills that you need for business acumen, right? Number two is, I would say, improve your sales. And it sounds funny because some nurses might think, well, I'm not in high ticket sales, I'm not really selling anything, so why should I invest in learning more about sales? Well, sales can actually help you with negotiating. It can help you understand, during meetings, how to make an impact with like influence, right? If you want to maybe submit a proposal, how to do that. And part of sales also, you could say, is pitching, how to pitch yourself, or pitch your idea, or pitch your proposal. Okay, so even in your promotion, part of that is pitching and sales, right? So those are things that, as a nurse, if I knew all these things much earlier, I would have definitely learned more of these types of skills. So sales is one of them. Like I said, just general business acumen, financial literacy. You know, we can go on forever about that, but obviously the traditional education system doesn't teach us much about financial literacy, and we don't really learn a lot of that in nursing either. But of course, that'll be very helpful for you in your career, especially for the novice nurses. When I first started, I didn't know a lot about the options, right? So that's one. And then the other thing is learning about visibility and branding, right? How to start building a personal brand. So we'll get into that in just a little bit. Um, and then also learning about intellectual property, right? About business, how you can take your intellectual property and actually make that an ecosystem where you can actually make money off of it, right? So currently, I'm sure most of you have heard in nursing, there are a bunch of nurses that are striking, particularly in the New York City area. I'm not going to get into too much detail about it, but obviously, these are nurses that are advocating for better pay, better working conditions, and everything like that. But what happens is if you are depending on just one stream of income from one employer, let's say the strike happens and you can't go to work, for example, right? Now that means there is no other stream of income for you. And many nurses often have 2 or 3 jobs, right? So it's very important for you to learn about intellectual property, how you can start diversifying, what you can do in terms of, can you create digital products to sell? Can you start consulting on the side and have a side hustle so that if something like this happens, you have multiple streams of income, okay? Okay, but what was I saying? Okay, so that's number 2. So if you're just joining me and you missed the beginning, I'm basically talking about how nurses stay broke in a system that they really carry, right? And how to flip that around, and a couple ways that you can switch that up. So number 1 is to negotiate your salary like your life depends on it, because literally it does, right? Most people live paycheck to paycheck, so it's very important to negotiate your salary so you have a high base salary, right? Number 2, upskill beyond just the traditional nursing skills. Okay, so we talked about that. Number 3, I will say, is build your own personal brand and stop building your employer's brand. Okay, I don't know if you guys heard me. Okay, start building your own personal brand and focus entirely on just your brand and stop building up your employer's brand, because guess what? You are replaceable as an employee. And if they have to make the decision, because they're a business too, right? Healthcare is a business. Most of these organizations and hospitals are businesses. So sometimes they have to make cuts, layoffs, things like that. And they can do that literally in the matter of minutes, days. We've seen in the job market, a lot of people are getting laid off. So if you're replaceable, you can be replaced really quickly. But if you start building a brand early, especially if you're a nursing student or a new graduate nurse, if you start building your personal brand while you are in nursing school, the opportunities for you will be exponential as you grow in your career. Okay. And you might say, what is she talking about, building a personal brand? Well, this means, basically, what is your reputation? What do you stand for? What are your values? What do people know you for? Um, do you interact with other people the way that you present yourself? Are you who you say you are in all interactions? And are you credible? Are you trustworthy? Basically, in essence, right? Can people trust you to promote you or, work with you or do business with you, whatever it is, right? It's building a personal brand. So that's one aspect. One aspect of it is the image, right? How do people perceive you? Okay. And the likability factor. Some people, might not like this part, but it is what it is. People in the workforce that get promoted the most are the ones that are well liked. So you have to really start building relationships, and that's part of your personal brand. Okay. The other thing is the image, the way you show up, the way you dress, even in your interviews, all that is really important. A LinkedIn profile is extremely important. I talked about this earlier today. How visibility is more important than your resume, and it's really the new resume, and how showing up on LinkedIn is a must if you want to grow in 2026, particularly whether it's in your career or in your business. Okay. So that's all part of building a personal brand. So a couple of tips that I have for you. Let's say you like to write. You might want to write articles or be featured in magazines, nursing related content. You might want to do publications. I actually met a couple nursing students that collaborated with some other professors and things like that. And they actually got published while they were in nursing school. So imagine, I didn't even know that, I could do that in nursing school, but imagine volunteering on projects or research early in your nursing career. Not only are you learning more skills, but you get to be published before you even graduate, right? That's part of your digital footprint. And that shows a lot of authority, and that's also part of your brand building publications, right? Um, yeah, so shout out to everybody that's watching. Precious L. Williams, Dr. Madison. So they're saying sales is everything. Pitching and sales are the truth and likability factor. And also on TikTok, shout out to Chanel. She has a podcast as well, been on her podcast. So let's say also that's another way to be more visible and build your brand. Let's say you're a nursing student and let's say you want to work in labor and delivery. We know the current state of what's happening in terms of labor and delivery, right, in the US, even in Canada, right? So if you want to be an advocate, be part of that, the equity, DEI movement and all that, and educate others, then I would suggest that you start getting connected with other advocates in the industry, right? Labor and delivery, right? You might want to go to the AWHONN conference, right? You might want to go to the specific specialty that you are interested in. If you put that on your resume, if you're part of that organization, you volunteer, you're involved in the nursing community and in labor and delivery events, right? So AWHONN is one of them, which is the American Association of Women's Health and Neonatal Nurses. It's a must. You must join that organization, right? Because if you have that on your resume and you go to the conference, you are going to be so well connected to other people. And again, that's part of brand building. And it brings me to the next point, which is networking. Okay. So as a nursing student, new grad, or experienced nurse, networking is a must. Okay. You never know what one connection will do for you, right? So in terms of your career, I know nursing students and new graduate nurses, right? As a nurse career coach, I didn't mention this in the beginning, but I've helped over 200 nurses land their dream roles in the last couple of years in ICU, ED, emergency, psych, you name it. And I'm helping them make six figures up to, 100 to 175K. Some of these nurses, what I teach them is how to build a brand, how to show up on LinkedIn, how to network, how to communicate with confidence, all these things, right? And how to build relationships while they're still in nursing school. And I'll tell you a quick example. The other day, one of them came to my free webinar. I actually have a free webinar this Friday at 1 p.m. So for any nursing student or new grad that's watching, the link is in the bio, or just go to newnursejob.com and you can sign up for the free webinar. So anyway, she came to the webinar. We had one quick conversation. I told her what to do. She reached out to a nurse manager that she had a connection with. And when she followed back up with me a couple days later, I told her specifically what to do. She called me back and said, guess what, Farron? She's like, they offered me a labor and delivery fellowship program and it wasn't even posted and they offered her the job. So this is what I'm talking about when I say start networking and building those relationships, okay? And something that I wrote down here is, relationships will open doors that your resume never will. So, like I said, this young lady, and this is in New York, this is in New York City, the posting wasn't even up. And because she had the courage, and I told her to pick up the phone, call that nurse manager, have that conversation, one connection, she now has a job offer that she didn't even officially apply to. So that's the power of building relationships, networking, and being in places that you can meet people. Hence, this is why you should be at the Nurses Making Business Moves conference. It's going to be in Tampa, Florida, March 6th and 7th. If you want to get your tickets, you can go to nursesmakingbusinessmoves.com. I'll drop the link later after this live so you can get your tickets. And who is this conference for? Can nursing students attend? Yes, absolutely. Nursing students will be there. In fact, there's several students coming from the University of Tampa. It's going to be held there in their in their entrepreneurship center, the JP Loth Entrepreneurship Center. So they'll be there. Nursing students are welcome. All students are welcome. You don't even have to be a nurse to attend. You can be a leader, an entrepreneur, or a nurse. Anyone is welcome to come. If you are interested in building a personal brand, being more visible, attracting more opportunities, being in the room to network with others who are doing big things in business and also in nursing, this is the room to be in. Okay. Chanel, I hope you can attend as well. I see that you're putting a bunch of hearts up there on TikTok. So yeah, who is this conference for? It's for anyone, but obviously it's curated a little bit more for the nurses because as the host of the conference, I wanted to create a space for healthcare professionals to learn about business, finance, marketing, sales, branding, content creation, and there's really no conference like this. And of course, this conference is going to be lit. It's the conference of 2026. You don't want to miss it. Okay. And of course, Precious Al Williams will be hosting the pitch competition. So shout out to her. Shout out to Dr. Kimberly Madison. She'll also be a speaker and she'll talk about her journey in entrepreneurship. And Precious Al Williams is a 13-time national pitch champion. She was the keynote last year, so she'll be there hosting the pitch competition. So those are a couple things that are going on. Like I said, one connection can literally change the trajectory of your career or your business. So number 4 is networking, okay? And if you're just joining me, I'm giving 5 tips on how to literally avoid being broke your whole nursing career and how to stop carrying systems that are really not built for nurses to create wealth, right? And how to start building wealth and understand that wealth is also just beyond monetary, right? Um, because we want to stop trading time for money, right? Nurses traditionally are taught, hey, if you want to make more money, you got to pick up more shifts, work more overtime, or just work really, really hard to make more money, right? So I want to switch that mindset and switch that thinking so that nurses that are interested in, maybe going into business, being a consultant, um, learn how to use their intellectual property, their skills, past experiences to start making multiple streams of income. Okay. And let's say you're not interested in business at all, you could still come to the Nurses Making Business Moves conference because it'll shift your mindset to learn things like how to negotiate your salary and how to think more like a business owner, right? Even if you don't want to be a business, essentially, if you're an employee, you have to look at yourself like you are a business, you are a brand, even if you don't officially have a registered business. I hope that makes sense. Okay, let me know if you guys have any questions or comments in the chat. Let me know where you're watching from. If you happen to be watching the replay, I will go back and look at all the comments as well. And then, like I said, I'll drop all the links for all the new nurses who want to attend my free training this Friday. It's at 1 p.m. Eastern. I'll drop the link again below. And then for the conference, it's March 6th and 7th in Tampa, Florida. I'll drop that link so that you guys can have it. Okay. So, number 5, the final tip that I have is to get in the right rooms and in the right circles. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Obviously, I talked about networking as the number 4 tip. So, in order for you to network, I don't want you to waste your time and just network randomly. I want you to be strategic about how you spend your time so that you don't waste your time, because really time is like the most precious asset that you really have, right? So how do you strategically pick which rooms you should be in, right? And when I say what circles you should be in, I always say that you should constantly be reevaluating who you spend time with. A lot of us waste time, right? I'm guilty of that sometimes. Sometimes you're watching TV. I don't really watch TV anymore. Once in a while, I might watch something, but typically don't really watch TV anymore. I'm typically consuming like business podcasts and like trying to upskill and increase my like personal development stuff. Okay, so that's very important. If you are a nurse, let's say you don't necessarily, there's a lot of free courses out there too, but like let's say you don't necessarily have the money to upskill by getting courses or things like that. There are so many free courses that you can actually take. Okay, there are also a lot of business courses that you can take. You can actually also go to the Small Business Administration. They have a lot of information about business if you are interested to learn more. Okay, so podcast is one way that I like to learn. And again, obviously, I have this podcast and I sometimes have different guests on and everything like that. So that is one way to strategically network. When you have a podcast, if you're thinking about starting a podcast, it's a great way to strategically network with people because you can say, hey, I have a podcast on this and this. I would love to feature you, right? And talk about whatever. And that's how you can make a connection with someone. Okay. The other thing is LinkedIn. You can network on LinkedIn, but be strategic about who you're networking with and building relationships, right? And then how do you select the right rooms? Obviously, you should be at the Nurses Making Business Moves conference, right? But go to conferences that will push you out of your comfort zone. Go to something different that you haven't been at. Sometimes you might want to bring a friend, but also sometimes you should just go alone. Let's say don't let certain circumstances stop you from going to a conference or to an event just because you're like, oh, I don't want to go alone. I'm introverted. You know, like for example, the Nurses Making Business Moves conference, some people didn't know each other, but then became best friends after the conference, right? So push yourself to be out of your comfort zone, okay? So be strategic. And also, another tip for networking and also being in the right rooms, find out who's going to be there. So, for example, Nurses Making Business Moves, what I'll do is just before the conference, about a week or two before the conference, I'm going to have um, a couple meetups in a Zoom setting. Well, I'll invite all of the attendees to come into a Zoom so we can talk about what to expect at the conference, if they have any questions, so people can start connecting before the conference. Okay. And then I'll also probably do a meetup again after the conference. And share some information, valuable information for everybody, and then get people a chance to be in community, to connect. And that's one of the feedback that I got last time. I didn't have a lot of time to incorporate that last time, so that's why I'm doing this time, so that people will get to know each other before they actually go to the conference. And then on the Friday, March 6th, that'll be the networking event. It's a 4-hour networking event, so then people will get to meet and greet, and then the next day is the full day conference. Okay. And really, the other big thing, before we end, I wanted to say, your environment truly matters. The spaces that you're in, the environment sometimes is more important than like the degrees or certifications that you have. Okay. I always talk about sometimes also paying for proximity, right? So if there's a certain conference or an event that you want to go to and you're like, oh my goodness, like I want to be able to connect with this particular person or this potential client, or even if it's like a corporate client, or maybe you're a consultant and you want to get a particular access to someone who can maybe give you a deal or contract, right? These are the ways. Paying for proximity, meaning buying your ticket to be in the room, is investing in yourself and investing in your career and in your business and in your future, right? So really, the environment that you're in is more important sometimes than the effort that you put in. So you might think like, I'm going to put my head down, work, and work really hard. But sometimes just going to one event can be transformative. So it's not always about doing more or working more. It's about being strategic, being in the right rooms, and then being around the right people. And that is what Nurses Making Business Moves is all about. It's not just nurses that you're going to meet there. It's entrepreneurs that are crushing it, other nurses that are crushing it. Like everyone has something to offer as an attendee, as a speaker, as a vendor, exhibitor, sponsor, whatever. So it's really a movement. It's a community. And I just want nurses to start winning, to start being wealthier, happier. And this is my contribution to the nursing community. So I hope that you can attend the Nurses Making Business Moves conference, or at least tell a friend, bring a friend, repost this to help with my marketing efforts. And then if you do want to sponsor the conference or at least donate a ticket or something like that, you can go to the website. There's sponsorship information, vendor information, or you could just direct message me if you want more info. Okay. So again, to wrap it up, number 1, negotiate your salary. Number 2, upskill beyond nursing skills. Number 3, build your personal brand and not your employer's brand. Number 4, network like a boss. And number 5, get into the right rooms and the right circles, and then reassess strategically where you should be this year. And you should definitely be in Tampa, Florida in on March 6th and 7th. All right. So that's it for me. I hope this was helpful. Let me know what you liked most about the content. Drop any comments, questions that you guys have, and let me know if I will be seeing you at the conference. Drop the comments below. Again, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time. All right. So I will end this one. And thanks to everybody. Oh, okay. Sorry. There's more. I'm going to stay on for a moment because I see more comments here. Okay. Networking. Kimberly says, one decision can change your life. The decisions in attending nurses making business moves. Thank you. We're all in business, either if you have a business or you work for someone who has a business. If you don't speak business, you're leaving money on the table every day. Yes, big comment there. Okay, someone from Michigan is here, but for some reason I can't put her. Beverly. So thanks, Beverly, for showing up. You wasted enough time in 2025. Don't make that same mistake. Yes. Okay. She said you don't have to watch TV when you're on it. Yes. So shout out to Kimberly Madison. She's mentioning how I was on the Jennifer Hudson show. Thanks for that shout out. Okay. Virtual meet and greet, brilliant. And then what about an event app? Yeah, I'm not there yet. Maybe in the next couple of years, but that's a good idea. Thank you for watching, everybody. Thank you, Kimberly, for coming on. You're always full of comments and support. I appreciate you, and I can't wait to meet you at the conference. And I'll